Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Untangle Tech Talk series. Today we'll be demonstrating and showcasing one of our applications, the SSL Inspector Application, and showcase how it works in our NG Firewall platform, how you can set it up properly, and answer any questions. My name is Shannon Bonfiglio, and I'm part of the marketing team here at Untangle. I'll be your host today. John Coffin is here. He's our Director of QA, and he'll be taking us through the slides as well as demonstrating the application and, of course, answering any questions. Next slide. Thanks, John. Just a few questions before we get started. If you do have any audio issues, please be sure you're selecting the correct audio preference on the right-hand side. If you choose to select using the phone, you will need to dial in and use the access code provided. Just a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, so you'll be able to rewatch or share this recording with anyone that you wish. We'll be posting it on the Untangle YouTube channel. We'll also, as I mentioned, be answering questions throughout the presentation. So on the right-hand side, you'll see a Q&A box. You can ask your questions there. If you have very specific questions or if we don't get to your question, you can always email us at support@untangle.com or sales@untangle.com. Now, before I move on, I just want to reiterate that this is a very highly technical webinar. If you're not familiar with Untangle, our solutions, or any networking concepts, then this is probably not the best webinar for you. I would suggest taking a look at our 101 webinar series, which cover more high-level topics, and you can find a full list of our webinars on our website. And with that, I'll pass it over to John.
Thanks, Shannon. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. This webinar is pretty involved. SSL Inspector is probably one of our hardest to use applications just because it requires some interaction with all the desktops on your network. So first of all, why would someone, go through the trouble of using SSL Inspector? Well, more than 50% of the traffic today is SSL encrypted, which is what you see when you see the HTTPS on your URL. Most of your email comes in through, IMAP, secured IMAP, which is also SSL encrypted. This is expected to increase to about 80% by the year 2020, which is not that far away. Also, we are seeing an increased amount of malware using SSL tunnels, whether it's through HTTPS or through just direct SSH tunnel to the application that got malware to download other malware to the device or spread it across the network. The reason they do that is most virus scanners that occur on the firewall are only done on unencrypted traffic, of course, because if it's encrypted, they can't read it. It gets downloaded to your device. It gets unencrypted by the device itself, and then the malware starts spreading at that point. That's one of the reasons why you want a two-phase virus protection. You want one on the desktop and another one on your firewall. But we can also scan that traffic by using SSL Inspector. So how does it work? Well, the way SSL Inspector does is that the firewall becomes the endpoint of the encrypted communication with some remote server. So in this case, we have Untangle in the middle. We have a client on the inside of your network, and then we have example.com as a website the client is going to. So the way SSL Inspector does is we receive the notification that it wants to access that website. We go out to that website and say, what is your SSL key? And so we make a duplicate of that SSL key and then pass it off to the client and say, this is the key that you want. So when the traffic starts, we actually have a key to that traffic. That only works if the client is willing to accept it. And that's why it requires some software additions to your client to get this process to work correctly. So there's different ways of inspecting. You can inspect, of course, HTTPS. You can also inspect SMTPS, which is a lot of your TLS settings when you're getting email in. Generally, that's not as much required because you're scanning the items on your mail server. But for those who want to do that, we'll review that. You can also develop custom configurations on the certificates, so it has exactly what you want on there. And part of the SSL inspection requirements for installing it is that you have to have administrative control for your devices. So there's some problems if you have kind of a bring your own device for your network. It might be harder for you to do SSL inspection, but we'll show you ways to work around that issue. So with that, let me actually get into how it works. So we'll go ahead and get our Untangle brought up. We'll take a look at applications. So if you go over here to install applications, you'll click on the SSL Inspector, which in turn will bring it up on your applications rack. This is also a rack specific. Let me just install Policy Manager so we can show. One of the methods that you can get around certain devices being inspected and others, you can actually have like a separate wireless for the bring your own. And what you can do is create a separate policy. So let's just go ahead and add another policy. So we can have a policy that doesn't use SSL Inspector. Maybe you just have just the web filter on there and so forth. So that was one way that you can divert that traffic of bring your own, because you're not really interested. You don't have to maintain those devices. So if they do get malware through HTTPS, it might not be the worst thing, and it provides a mechanism to still scan your internal machines, but with SSL inspection, and those that bring their own devices do not get that inspection. They don't get that warning. So as you can see here, I've installed it already. When I install it, I'll go ahead and enable that by switching the power on, this power button. The other thing I want to do is look at my server verification. We want to make sure that there's no problems detected. Generally, the problems that you'll get is that maybe you added a new IP address to the Untangle, or there's a new network, or you change the name of your Untangle, and then your certificate that gets generated automatically at install time will not have the proper identification from that from your Untangle. So let me show you what you have to do if you get some verification errors. What we'll do is we'll go under config, go on administration, and then we'll go to our certificates. And what we'll want to do is actually just generate a new authority. And this will include all our IPs that are brought in and maybe make any change names. So in here, we'll put the name of our Untangle, and then, just go ahead and put your country and state, and organization can be anything, and organization unit is optional. I've already generated one of these, and because I had new IPs, so as you can see, it has all my IPs. This is my outside IP, and here is my internal IP. So now I have all those in my certificate. So I'm ready to start inspecting my traffic. So I'll go ahead and go back to my apps and go to my SSL Inspector. So as you can see now, I can download the root certificate. This is going to enable the clients behind Untangle to accept our generated certificates. The thing is, we're not a root generator. Your particular Untangle is not a root trusted authority for generating certificates. So what you have to do is make all the machines behind your Untangle say, I will trust any certificate that's generated by my firewall. And that's what you're doing on here. So what we'll have to do is we'll go ahead and log on to one of the PCs behind the Untangle. So as you can see right here, I'm on that, and I'm going to go ahead and download that certificate. So what I'm going to do is go to my internal IP address of my firewall and type the IP address and then /cert. This is going to download the certificate, and Windows will actually recognize it right away. And we can say we want to identify websites. So we just say OK. And I prefer a lot of times to just manually download it. The reason is Windows will install it in the certificate manager, but the problem is that Windows actually, for example, Firefox does not put it in the right location. So unfortunately, this is not coming up right. Let's try this again here. So we want to open this location here. So here's the certificate I downloaded. So what I'll do is go ahead and I'm going to install the certificate. And I'm not going to do it automatically. I'm going to tell it where I want it. So I'm going to put it in Trusted Root Certificate Authorities. And it's going to give me a warning. I say, yes, I want that import. So great. I'm all set if I'm using the Google Chrome browser or the Microsoft Internet Explorer. The difference is Firefox does not keep it keeps its certificates separately. So this is a little more complicated. So if you have multiple environments, sometimes you have to install it in multiple places. So I'll go over here, options. I go to security. I'll just scroll down here to the bottom. And I want to view my certificates. And I'm going to import. So I'm going to import my root certificate here. And now if I scroll down here, you'll notice I have my Untangle certificate now in here that I generated on my own box. So great now. So now my Firefox is all set up. So now I have all my browsers set up on this particular client. This is the manual process to do it. It works fine if you have anywhere from 1 to 20 devices. It's not bad. If you're looking at a larger environment like a school, a large business with like 200 employees or more, you're probably not going to want to go to sit at everyone's computer and do this. So there's a couple of ways you can do that. If you're running a directory connector, for example, like Microsoft Office, Microsoft Active Directories, you can actually do a group install, and we actually have notes on how to do that right on our wiki. You can do a group policy. So if we go here to SSL Inspector, and then you can go down here to Trusted Certificates. So down here, you find that. Yeah, right here, group distribution. So we have it for different, Windows Server 2003, 2008, 2012, either one. So you can actually have Windows actually distribute that out to all your Windows clients. For some other ones, if you do want to scan, a lot of people bring their own. You can actually make it where they can have it under Captive Portal. I'll demonstrate that towards the end. So first of all, you have to kind of decide what areas you're going to scan. The reason is you can't scan everything because some built-in, like for example, the Google Chrome browser knows the signature of Google certificates. So for example, the Chrome browser will not let you go to a website even with the certificate installed go to a Google website because it'll say, hey, this certificate's not any good. Maybe you have malware. So they're thinking of that. So you really have to select which ones you're going to go to. For example, this one, I've made a rule, and a lot of times it's easier to put exceptions in there to bypass certain areas. So it works pretty well. So right now I put one in, and I want to scan all my. Sorry, wrong one. I want to scan all the CNN traffic I go through. So if I go to the encrypted version of CNN, so as you can see, the website comes up. It looks normal for me as a user. Let me open this up a little more. But let's take a closer look. So if we look at the certificate, I haven't restarted the browser since I added that certificate. Let me re-add that. So if we look at the certificate, it says secure, it's got the green. We'll take a look at that, and it says verified by Untangle. So that's what tells you that it's using the certificate. We are actually intercepting the traffic as it's coming across the firewall, because the certificate that the user is seeing is the Untangle one, not the CNN.com one. So now let's take a look at our reporting. So first of all, we'll look at our sessions. And we can see that we're inspecting several sites. It's being inspected. Some are being ignored because they're not on our inspection list. But we can see the CNN. And what you can see more is actually with web filter, you can actually see the domain they're going to, but you can't see the subdirectories they're going to. So for example, let me just pick one particular news story. And I'll just click on that. So I get a subdirectory. So now I have this complete subdirectory here that I normally wouldn't see under web filter without inspection. So if I take a look at here, I'll go ahead and do a refresh. So now I can actually see individual details of what we're going to and the subdirectories we're going to. Let's just get the full directories. And we'll want to get the URL part of the directory here. Let's see, where it is at. Oh, I can see that under web filter. So if we go to web filter, and then we'll go to our report, and we're going to look at web events. And then what we'll want to do is see our URL and URI. So if we take a look at that, as you notice, we're actually seeing the full directories on a lot of our inspections, because now we have SSL Inspector and we're able to see the entire string that goes through there. And that enables that to go through. So if we go back to our SSL Inspector, like I said, we do have one that you can inspect all, and you can select that if you like. There are some drawbacks to that where you're inspecting everything. For example, if you go to Google, normally it looks okay, but there's certain areas, YouTube, for example, you will get some failed connections because it doesn't like the, but overall, you'll be able to use most of the site. So there are some drawbacks with inspect all. I generally go for just inspecting certain areas, but you can use that, and that works pretty well. Some of the other things you can do is looking into if you want to process SMTP traffic. Some servers will not deliver mail if it doesn't recognize your certificate as one recognized by the root authorities. So there are some drawbacks on that, but it does make it pretty nice if you want to inspect your incoming email a little closer and get more spam catch more spam traffic. And it really has to detail on case-by-case basis. What I recommend is setting up a separate rack for your mail server. Put SSL Inspector and then tune your rules based on where you're getting mail delivered. And a lot of times you can see that there's some mail deliveries that you want to kind of whitelist and other ones that you want the SSL inspection on. Again, building the rules is really pretty simple. Generally, what you want to do is give it a name of anything. And then what I usually use is the SSL SNI name. This is the name that's provided in the clear, so you know if it should be inspected or not. And what I'll do is put a asterisk, so I'm going to catch all the subdomains and any variations on that. And then I'll put down exactly the website that it goes to. For example, I could choose something like CBS.com. I want to start inspecting those. And then I can choose whether I want to inspect or ignore. I'll say inspect and done. And then what we want to do is bring that above the ignore rule. So this is kind of the last rule that if it doesn't fall under any of these, we're going to go ahead and ignore it. So we want to move that above it. So I'm going to put it next to my other rule. No, it's not grabbing it. Let me go ahead and just save it. Let's try that again. When you're working remotely here. All right, so now I've put it in there so I can inspect CNBC for all those conditions. Pretty easy to use. Then I can go to my reporting after I've implemented this across the board and look at the different sessions, how much is inspected. I'm like, wow, I'm not inspecting enough, so I might change my rules so I inspect more of the traffic and then move that along. I can see what kind of sites are being inspected. Seems across the board. The reason you'll see in a lot of Google and Facebook, they buy a lot of advertising at other sites. So there's icons on there that even though you didn't go to Facebook.com, they have like a Facebook icon to share and so forth, and that's code that goes back to Facebook. So some of the things I can look at, any block sessions I have. Untrusted is sites that for some reason the certificate wasn't accepted on their end, so it didn't bring it. As you can see, it's most of the advertisers that are bringing that. Abandoned is one it didn't know what to do with, particularly whether the certificate didn't match or it couldn't generate the certificate for it, and it tells you a reason for that, and it works out real. So one thing I wanted to cover was, what do I do for bring your own? I do want to inspect that traffic because I worry they'll spread malware within my network. So there's a couple things you can do. The first thing to do is you can install Captive Portal. And you don't have to install this for the whole thing. You can just do it for the people that are bringing their own devices. We're using policy rules. So I'll go ahead and install that. I'm going to go ahead and make a rule here. On my captive page, I'm going to require a certificate. So they're not going to be able to get on my network unless they install the certificate. And it's also going to give them a link so they can download that themselves. So I'll go ahead and save that. So let's just take a look here. So I take a look at this, and it says my root certificate is not on. So what I'm allowed to do is I can click on here to install it, or it has a Windows installer. So someone can install that on their tablet, or if they're using like a laptop and they're just logging onto the wireless, they can go ahead and click and connect and get that certificate for them for what they need to do, install that. So that's one of the ways to kind of manage the SSL inspection with bring your own devices also. Again, this is all pretty much requires administrative access. If not, it's, you have to make some rules like the Captive Portal. Well, you can't get on our network unless you install this certificate. Kind of covered the group distribution. It's a quick way. Honestly, if I had more than 20 devices to install this on, I would use the group policy or use some kind of Captive Portal to install that. Untangle does have a certificate installer for Windows, so you don't have to manually go in and install it in the Windows certificate manager and the Firefox, but and it works pretty well. You can go to and get the certificate. I showed that, showing the captive on there. And then also, we have quite a bit of information on our wiki how to install this. It's a quick webinar. There's a lot to this. There is a lot of work, but there you will find a lot of rewards in installing SSL Inspector in your network. The way you're able to grab more and more of the information of what's going on in your network, where people are going, and help protect those people from malware or viruses on the other end. Kind of talked about installing the, on each one using Captive Portal if on bring your own device and guest networks. You can also use web filter. Our web filter actually has a really good identifying domains. We can't see what subdirectory you should go to, but using SNI, which is any modern browser provides that information of what website they're going to, you'll be able to filter those sites and go without installing SSL Inspector. So sometimes using SSL Inspector is kind of like, it's not on or off. A lot of times it's more of a slider. How much work do you want to compare to how much inspection you're planning to do? So you really have to judge that for your own network. A lot of it is just, when you see messages like this, let me turn Captive Portal off so I can show you. So if you see a secured connection failed, generally those are SSL errors that come on that. If you get parts of it not showing up, it's because it's inspecting that and it didn't trust that certificate. Just different ways to troubleshoot your particular installation, how to find those problems. Do we have any questions? I know I kind of went long on this because there's a lot to cover.
Yeah, there's a bunch of questions. So someone is mentioning that they had SSL Inspector working actively and found the network was slow, and after they disabled it, it worked better. Is it somehow related?
Well, it does put a lot of strain on your firewall, so you definitely have to gear your hardware. Like if I was running Linksys even at home, I don't think I would be running SSL Inspector. Just the process of generating a certificate for every web request sometimes just takes too much on the device. So you have to kind of look at your bandwidth, and it is going to be a little slower because you have to get the certificate from the other machine. This is what the firewall is doing, making basically a duplicate of that and then passing that on to the client, and it has to do that for every web request. So it can put some strain on your hardware. But if you have decent hardware that's set up, it should make no difference on bandwidth. As you can see, I was going to websites and there was no difference in speed whether I was using, like right here, I'm using SSL Inspector on here. It provides almost no difference in the speed as the sites come up and so forth. So that's just really based on your hardware. It does take more hardware power if you're using SSL Inspector, but it's not, in the magnitude of that you have to double the size of your CPU or anything like that. It's more like in percentages, like 10, 20% better performance.
Okay, great, thanks. Let's see. If I have a trusted certificate already installed on my Untangle router, can I avoid this process of installing a self-signed certificate on each PC?
So that's a really common question, and a lot of it is understanding. It's like there's a certificate to identify who you are as the firewall. So when I go to untangle.foo.com, that certificate that's on that machine is identifying that this site is untanglefoo.com. What you're trying to do is you're trying to generate certificates for millions of websites out there on the Untangle, and that's what SSL Inspector does. No one will give you a certificate that says you're google.com. So that's why you have to come up that you're a root authority. And that's the difference. It's not a certificate, it's a root authority certificate. So that's what you're installing on that, saying that I trust my particular firewall to generate trusted certificates. And that's the difference on that. So you can't, it's not something you can buy and just have it on your Untangle and you don't have to install anything. You have to have everyone trust your Untangle to generate valid certificates.
Okay. Is it possible to use SSL Inspector in conjunction with CLAM AV on Untangle?
Definitely. What we do is we unencrypt it. We provide the key for all the devices that they can look into the encrypted traffic. So whether it's CLAM AV or the virus blocker, which is the commercial version, if inspection, application inspection, any of those can now look inside the traffic to see what's in there. So the SSL Inspector is really kind of an assistant to all the other applications once it's installed.
Okay, someone is asking about the decrypt speed limits, but I'm assuming you already covered that when you mentioned that it depends on your hardware.
Yeah, it's really strictly on your hardware. So you're just going to have to gauge it based on, how many people are using it, how many sites you're inspecting, and then gauge your hardware based on that.
Great. Is it possible to inspect Google Drive website and block Google Drive sync apps separately?
That might be kind of specific. I think that's something we'd have to kind of try out. Google does a lot of things to avoid man-in-the-middle type attacks, which is good. Unfortunately, that makes inspecting those areas very difficult. So with Google, a lot of times you really have to kind of look into it and see how it's working, and then see if you have problems with it, because a lot of times they hard code their certificates actually on their products, so you can't fool them with basically a clone of their certificate.
Someone is asking what version of NG Firewall are you running?
So I am running, this is 13.2, which will be coming out soon. We'll probably be posting a beta on the forums in a few days. As you can see, there's some new things. Like you can see what policies you have. The graphs are animated now. There will be a whole list of features coming out of that.
Let's see. This is maybe a support question. Our primary desire to run SSL Inspector is to allow for the scanning of TLS encrypted email via spam blocker destined to our Exchange server. Currently, the only way spam blocker can be used to scan all emails is to have it strip the start TLS advertisement out of the EHLO. Will this work for this situation?
Yes, you can actually decrypt SMTP traffic coming in and do that. There are some caveats. There are some web servers that actually take a look at your certificate and see if it's a valid one based on internet root certificates. So there are some email servers that will not allow delivery to you if you're using SSL Inspector. It's very rare. It's mostly ones that are doing certificate matching, and they're really obvious, and you just need to monitor your logs to identify those. But you can actually inspect all TLS type SMTP traffic as it comes through.
SSL Inspector seems to interfere with most online gaming communities, such as Steam. How do you find this to be true as well?
I have not had any personal experience with that. The way they work is a lot of times they have embedded certificates. Anything that has an embedded certificate, we're starting to see that now in internet devices like the Nest, because of course it's owned by Google now, actually has an embedded certificate in there. So it makes it very difficult to inspect. So it's a changing environment. Depending on the devices out there, you'll have to kind of arrange your rules and inspect, allow passing of those rules and not have them inspected by SSL Inspector.
How many built-in ciphers does SSL Inspector have?
We have pretty much all the ones that come standard with Debian. I haven't seen really the way the certificates work is that we're actually building our own, and we're just accepting the one that comes in. So we don't have to build a matching cipher based on what the site that you're going through. So it makes it pretty easy to just generate a new one, because we can use our own cipher even though it doesn't match the cipher of the site that you're going to.
Follow-up question to that. Does SSL Inspector re-encrypt the outgoing information with a known cipher or the original cipher?
So the traffic coming into the network, the LAN side of the network, will be encrypted with the certificate that Untangle knows and has the key to, so it can unlock it. The traffic going out into the internet will be going out with the original key that's out there. So, and you're generating this key, so the key is unique to your particular Untangle. This is not like a generic key that we've added to all our Untangles that are going on there. When you install, it generates a unique key for your particular Untangle. So that traffic is encrypted with a unique key that only your Untangle knows.
Okay. Do you provide a recommended no block list for sites?
What I recommend is actually going with our default settings that we have in here, and those are pretty good. And then you can adjust it as you go from there. So the inspect all is usually unchecked, but if you just go with the standard set that comes in here, usually you'll have almost no problems with initially starting off. And then as you look at your particular traffic, you may want to add more sites to that list.
Okay, great. So a lot of these questions are getting a little specific. So if you have a very specific instance that you're having trouble or something, please contact us at support@untangle.com. They'll be better to assist you rather than through this. Let's see, just a few more coming in, John. Can I install my mail server's digital certificate on the router?
No, you can't do that because it has to all traffic coming in has to be accepted to that. So if you're having traffic from like a website come in, it can't use your email certificate.
Okay, and then is Captive Portal the best way to ensure all devices install the certificate?
It is. It is. You can also look at the traffic. It'll be pretty obvious by looking at SSL Inspector. You'll just see one particular machine that's being ignored for its traffic all the time. Also, the easiest way is people start screaming like they can't get to websites, or they're getting warnings that the site isn't encrypted or it's open. So you'll get calls right away on that if they don't get that. But Captive Portal works great. We check to see if the certificate's there, and it just sees exactly what needs to be there.
Great, thanks. So there was a question about a minimum spec for running SSL Inspector on Untangle. Do we have any guidance on the wiki about that?
I don't think there is. I mean, obviously, if you're seeing regular loads for your machine in the yellows or the high greens, I would say, your machine's probably going to be a little bit underperforming with SSL Inspector. It all depends too how many sites are you inspecting and how much of that traffic is hitting the SSL Inspector. There's so many variables. I would call support or sales, and then they might give you an idea, because then they can run down how many machines you have and how you plan to use it.
All right. So if this is completely confusing to you and you would like assistance setting up SSL Inspector or just Untangle in general, we have many applications. We do offer professional services, whether you're installing for the first time or need help configuring or adjusting your configuration settings. We offer professional services, so you can contact us today to help make sure everything's set up correctly. I would like to mention we have a new program. It's called a Security Upgrade Program. You can contact us at sales@untangle.com or call your sales representative. Basically, we're offering some special pricing if you're going to upgrade your existing appliance or software license. And then if you have a competitor's product, you also receive some special discounts if you trade in and get an Untangle product. So I can't give you any more information than that. You have to call sales@untangle.com email sales@untangle.com or give us a call to find out what those special pricing are, especially with year-end discounts. You might want to take advantage of that. Let's see. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Let's see. One more question came in, John. Can you chain two proxy servers together, both using the Untangle certificate?
I'm not too sure on that. I'd really have to see kind of the network on that. The proxy servers shouldn't make any difference. I'm guessing that you have the proxy servers behind Untangle because they would just see they would have to have, they don't care about the certificates at all. They're just passing on the data, so it should work.
Yeah. So if we didn't get to your question or you didn't get the answer you wanted, please contact us at support@untangle.com. We're here to help. If you have any questions regarding how our product works compared to others, our sales team is standing by to chat with you. As John showed, we have the wiki. That's for every single app that we have. That's technical documentation, helps with setting up any questions, as well as screenshots, of everything. We have the forums, which is our active community, so you can ask your question there, chat with other Untangle users as well as engineers. John's always on there. And then you can check out our upcoming webinars. We have a nice library of webinars now that I believe covers most of our applications. So you can watch those to learn how to set those up or common questions. We have our 101, which I mentioned. It's a higher level topic, this time on ransomware, protecting your network from ransomware. It's a hot topic, hot trend right now, as it seems to be in the news weekly. So you can register for that. And then later in January, we'll have a tech talk on configuring Untangle. So John will take us through the basic setup of setting up and configuring Untangle, kind of what you need to do, best practices, stuff like that. So we hope to see you then. Hope everyone has a wonderful holiday, and we'll see you in 2018. Thanks, John.